Greetings, viewers. My name is Peterson, and welcome to yet another show, to yet another episode of the Kimche Show. Today is a very special day. We have a special guest. Her name is Sharon. She is the founder and the team leader of an organization that is called Unfold Global, and it basically deals with helping young people deal with their emotional wounds and deal with the hurts that they have received in the course of their life. So I believe that you're going to be impacted. You're going to learn something from her story and from her experience with other people as well. And our prayer is that you're going to come out of whatever wound that you're going through. Stay put, and remember to like our channel. Remember to share with someone who's going to be blessed as a result. So karibuni sana, and Sharon, karibu sana.
Thank you.
To the Kimche Show.
Thank you for having me.
Salimia watazamaji wetu.
Hi guys. It feels so good to be here, and I'm praying that as we continue this conversation that my story will be a blessing to you. Thank you for joining us.
So who's Sharon?
Okay. So that is a question that sometimes sounds easy, but answering.
I know.
Yeah. So Sharon, probably I would want to share something a bit of my family.
Okay.
So that someone may be wondering where I'm from. So I was born in a family of 8.
Family of 8.
And I am from Kisumu. In a place called
Nyakach.
So that is where my life started. I was born in Nairobi actually, but the better part of my life was in Nyakach. Yeah, and my life started developing from that place.
So where in Nairobi were you born?
Pumwani.
Okay. Pumwani. So you were born in the same hospital.
Oh, look at that. Yeah. So that's where I was born.
Okay.
And then my life, we went back home. My parents later on came back to live in Nairobi. Okay. But the better part of my life, I lived in the Ushago place, Nyakach, Koguta community. So that is where I developed as a child. Later on, I started my schooling. Yeah, I went to Genesis Preparatory. Then it was among the private schools that existed there. So I then later on transitioned into primary school, joined class 1 in a school called Gu Primary School. Okay. Yeah, and then later on went to high school, the same place, just neighborhood school, still Gu High School.
Okay.
Yeah. So we used to call it Great Upper Hill.
Oh, Great Upper Hill
University.
That why?
Because Gu doesn't really have a meaning, so we came up with something to define our school.
Okay. Yeah. That was good. So you defined your school to Great Upper Hill University.
Yeah. Wow. So that is the kind of name we used to define that. Then apart from now, just part of my family, you get to know that, and I am the 6th born. But apart from that, my life entails so many things. So I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. I am a mental health advocate. I love having conversations about mental health.
Good. And
that is one of the reasons why I'm here.
Yes, and we're going to delve into that, because people are really suffering. Probably you know someone who's having a mental health issue, but people are not speaking out about that. So in your family of 8, both your parents are there?
No, my mom is there, but we lost our father in 2014.
Sorry for that.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how was life like? Growing up in Nyakach, your siblings and parents, so how was the situation like at home?
Like any other person, when we talk about childhood, it was good, but again, it still had those strenuous moments that every person will have. So the better part of my childhood, I was nurtured by my nanny. So let me call it our nanny. So my dad was a mechanic, so he was based in Nairobi. My mom was a business person. She used to sell clothes, and so she was also based in Nairobi. So I was literally raised by our nanny who took care of me, and it was beautiful. My life with my siblings, my older siblings, we had like a bit of a age gap. but we had beautiful relationships and also strenuous relationships, like any other siblings will have. But it was good.
So you didn't get to spend a lot of time with your parents because they were in Nairobi. So it's your nanny who like mothered you.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially the development years. That's where now the child begins to develop a relationship with their parents. So for me, I didn't get to experience that. So she knew me more, and then at some point she left. Of course, when they take care of her, somebody else will come and take over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So tell us a little bit about, not a little bit, tell us about the Unfold Global, what you're doing and what it is about in your words now. You know me, I just spoke in highlights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Unfold Global is an organization whose vision was birthed out of a passion and a desire to see people heal from soul wounds. Having been in a place where I experienced so much woundedness in my childhood and across life, and I realized how I was struggling in so many ways, including my relationship with God. So Unfold was founded last year because of that deep desire that I've shared, that I want to see people heal from soul wounds. And usually most people don't know how that looks like. Many people don't even know what trauma looks like or what does it mean to have trauma. And so Unfold exists to be able to have people have those conversations. So, and then our end goal, big picture, is to create a safe space where people can come and talk about mental health issues, whether you're Christian or not, without feeling condemned or judged. Because there is nothing wrong with someone who is going through emotional or mental health issues, because we all experience that. So the vision is to make sure we are creating that space for you to be able to talk about those things. Okay. And then feel like you're in a space where you're able to be heard, be seen, appreciated, and then get help for you to find healing.
So be heard, be seen, be appreciated.
Yeah.
I think that's what everyone wants.
Yeah.
But we don't always get that. Yeah. So you have highlighted something about trauma, and especially childhood trauma, and many people, I think, they don't notice or realize about whether they are suffering. So what are the signs, or rather, how is trauma inflicted? Is it inflicted? Sometimes.
Yeah.
So maybe you can help our viewers, maybe you can walk us through that phase, that process about trauma and how trauma affects and impacts a child. And also even in adulthood, because I believe even in relationships, many people are suffering because of the childhood traumas. So probably maybe if you could engage us a little bit on traumas, especially as a child. How does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, trauma for different people, it will be defined differently, because we all have different experiences as we go through life. So trauma is anything that changes your normal emotional state or the normal way that you are wired to behave. And so usually it's something that happens to you and affects you emotionally, mentally, and even sometimes even spiritually. So for some, trauma is inflicted with them, like was inflicted to them during their childhood. Maybe it could be they were sexually abused, maybe someone was physically abused, or someone was raised in a family that was full of violence. Maybe this person experienced neglect or rejection. These things affect us emotionally, and then they begin to inform how we relate and see the world, and then now they develop in our hearts as wounds. So you are hurting, and consistently most people don't know how to navigate that. So usually that is how trauma comes and develops in different perspectives or different areas in people's lives. So answering about how it begins during the childhood development. Like for me, I will use my story because it's what I know best to explain this.
Yes.
That I want to be authentic and as real as possible.
Yeah.
Because now what I've explained about my parents, not growing around my parents, especially during the development years, a child needs a connection with the parent, especially during the 0 to 4 years old, and sometimes it goes up to 10 years. That's the time you need to have and develop a relationship with your parents. Those are the times when connection is modeled for you. That is where love is modeled for you. That is where you need affection of a parent. Of course, I know some people don't, like, maybe lose their parents during when they're giving birth or something. But whoever is taking care of you as a child during that time, whatever happens to you during that time informs how the emotional part of you is developed.
Maybe you can talk to a parent who's there, but they're not together with their children. Yeah, just talk to a parent.
Okay. Yeah, let me share my experience as a child, because my story is what I know best, and I just want to be authentic and as vulnerable as possible to be able to help you that is watching here. So my parents were living in Nairobi, so the better part, especially my development part as a child, my parents they were not there. They were, were living apart. And so even when my mom came, now when I was transitioning into being a teenager, I didn't understand my mom, because I didn't spend the time I needed emotional attachment with her, the development part, when I was developing. So I struggled understanding my mom, and she struggled understanding me. So every time I would strive to do something to please her, I would always find myself on the wrong side, and that called for serious beatings. But as a child, you don't understand. So you see it as your parent hates you and that they're punishing you. So why am I sharing is this? Because during our childhood experiences, there's just always a part of a child that longs for an affection from a parent, affirmations, just getting to have hugs, receive hugs from your parents. I know this will look like differently for people, because again, parents will like say, I'm trying to do something and put food on the table. But it's also important, parents who've been listening to me, that even as you strive to work and go look for opportunities, it's important that you spend time in knowing your child, you spend time in just showing love to your child, because the moment you lose connection with them during those the development stages from 4 years, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, as they become teenagers, it will be impossible for you to hack conversations with them. Then you realize your teenager doesn't want to talk to you about anything, because if the relationship is not developed from early stages, then it becomes hard, and then they begin to feel that they are not loved at home. And if people don't feel loved at home, they will struggle with loving people outside here.
Could it be that the reason why most parents don't really connect with their teenagers, it is because they didn't spend quality time with them during the formative years, 0 to 8, you said?
It doesn't have to be that way. There are parents who will still spend time with their kids, but maybe along the way, maybe there's a connection, maybe during conversation, or maybe they shared something with you, but they felt they were not heard. So they begin to build a wall and disconnect. Another thing also was teenagers transition, they begin to find new friends. So usually when kids are growing, my dad is my best friend, my mom is my best friend. But the moment they begin to explore life out there, they find new best friends that they will be spending more time. So the issue is, parents, even during those teenage times, be intentional as you are during their development, even as they are teenagers, still be intentional about building a relationship, so that you don't lose them to the people out there, because that's where they'll be going for advice, that's where they'll be spending time. Make sure you're still intentional about building a relationship with them.
So your particular story as you're growing up now, you're being brought up by the nanny, then your mom comes and you're not getting along. So how did that even affect your school life? And at what age now did you start like interacting with your mom now? Yeah.
I would say probably clearly around 9-10 years. 9-10 years, that's when I would say like she was really, really there, because during the most times she will come, because I said she was a businesswoman, she used to sell good mutumba clothes. So she would come and distribute them, then immediately come back to Nairobi. So we would not even be spending a lot of time. So I really struggled. I was a performer in school. I was doing well. But because there's always a craving in my heart, I feel like I long for a connection. I long for a love that I'm not getting from my mom. I know she loved me, but there's always a way a child wants to experience love from a parent. So because I wasn't getting that, I struggled a bit with self-esteem. So I was a performer, but interacting with people, even in school, I was one student where I knew the answer in class and the teacher will ask, and I will never raise my hand because I felt I'm not good enough. My self-esteem was not built enough. So I was a very, very shy girl. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that you were shy.
I was extremely.
Okay, so we shouldn't take shyness on the surface. Probably there's something
Yeah.
that is going on in the inside.
Yeah.
Okay, and your high school life, how was that like?
My high school life was good. I joined high school and it was a good time for me to just go get to make new friends, but it is also the place where my transformation began. School, that's where I received Jesus, because the experiences at home still continued. So I went to high school still struggling with loss of self-esteem. I was still struggling with friendships. I was always striving to fit in and being to please people in order to receive the love that I was not getting at home. So until now in 2014, I went for an event. It was organized for CU. It was Weekend Challenge. Maybe many will know. So that's where I received Jesus and things changed for good. So because I wasn't like born from a family where people were believers. No, my family is from like they are based from traditional beliefs, African belief. I mean, like these churches, Israelis or this is a do 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 do. It was good. We used to dance there, but still, the gospel was not shared with us. And so I always had a longing, especially when we sit in class and the teacher would be teaching about CRE thing, and I was like, when we read the Bible, I would hear about God the Creator, and I was like, I think I would really love to know more about Him and have a relationship with Him. And now I didn't know how to go about that. Then we went for this weekend challenge. It happened at Maseno University. So we attended this, and I remember in particular the preacher of that day, he was preaching about Jesus and his love for us, and he shared that it is my sin that brought Jesus here on earth, that he may die for my sin. So I was the one who deserved death on the cross, but Jesus died that I may live and receive forgiveness. And he also shared about rest that people receive when they welcome Jesus in their hearts. And because I was wounded and I was struggling with so much stuff, even as a teenager, I was trying to find my identity. So when he shared that Jesus can give me rest and peace, and that he also loves me and will forgive my sins, when he asked people who would want to receive him, I really ran. I was the first person, and I welcomed him into my heart. And I remember that particular day, I felt such a peace that I've never ever experienced before. I experienced, like, I felt really, really loved. And so that has changed my life till date, how I see people, and even how I have a relationship with God.
You can actually recommend Jesus to anyone who is hurting, to anyone who's not stable. So Jesus is the doctor, Jesus is the healer.
Yeah, because he knows every part of us. There isn't anything that is hidden from him. And so when we open up ourselves to him, he's able to take care of the things that are happening in our hearts, that are happening in our minds. He knows how to take care of all those things because he's God and he knows you inside out.
Now, let's move to something else about, let's talk about relationships. So how's your, let me call it love life. How's your relationship life? How has it been? And how was it, or how has it been affected by the childhood traumas? Yeah, maybe you can walk us through that.
Okay. Wow, that's a beautiful thing I would want to talk about. So I haven't had so many love relationships, but I've had two. So the first relationship I got into was after high school. Someone will say, "Oh, you are still young," but at least I was conscious of what was happening. So because of my craving, like always like trying to do things and prove a point that I am good enough to be loved, because how that was modeled at home for me, I always kept on doing things in order for me to be loved. So I left knowing that even out here I have to do things for people to love me. So my first relationship is this guy we met and we were dating, and I always struggled, you know, even when he would tell me he loves me, I would not believe it, because I always believed that I wasn't good enough to be loved, and that I also had to do something for you in order for you to love me. So constantly I will try to do things to please him. Then I realized it wasn't working. So even because he was showing me so much love, and I also realized that trauma and that wounding was the one driving me to him, because I'm experiencing a love I've not experienced from my father, or from some distorted relationship between my brothers. So I wasn't even seeing him as a romantic partner. I was seeing him as someone offering a daddy support or a brother support, and that really brought a disconnect. Until some point, I we couldn't continue, and we had to just part ways.
That's interesting. So, in your boyfriend, you were like secretly looking for father love and brother love,
Yeah.
not boyfriend love per se.
Yeah.
So, and so that's where I think many people get it wrong. Sometimes you're getting into a relationship, but you're not looking for this kind of the romantic relationship per se. You're trying to fill a gap that that was there.
Yeah.
When you're growing up.
And sometimes you're not even oblivious about it. Like you still think that I love this person, but there's just a way we attract who we are, especially when we are wounded. There's always a higher percentage of us also attracting people who are wounded like us. There's just a thing that attracts us to the other person. Yeah. And until one day you realize this is how I am, this is what's going on, and then you begin to work on it. And then I've had a relationship that ended not long ago, but it was, I still realized I was struggling with the same thing. I didn't know how. I wanted to give the love, but I don't know how to receive it. I was also struggling with boundaries. I was really a person who is really boundaryless, and now when you overstep again, I feel offended by it. But because that was not allowed at home, so I've been like a person who I do things to please people, even at the expense of my own peace and joy. So the other guy he was a good guy. He loved Jesus, but it got to a place I felt like he loves me too much. Like it was a new thing for me.
Well,
like being honest was really a new thing for me, and I felt like maybe he's just pulling my legs. Maybe he's not true. Then it got to a point I started ghosting. Like what you do, kushika simu, stop. Maybe you listen to this, but we talked about it. You keep, stop responding to text, until it got to a place where I just walked away, because I'd started my healing journey, but there were still things that were not clear. And then that's how I walked out of an issue that was actually really good, because I had things I had not dealt with from my childhood.
You have said something very, very, very deep, yeah? That he loved you too much. So it's possible for someone in this time and age to love you so much, yet you don't have the capacity to receive that love.
Yes.
And that was a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
They are dating, they haven't ghosted, they haven't walked away, or they are still ghosting and walking away.
Yeah.
How can the person loving now identify that this person is going through something? How is that like?
I think before I mentioned that, is that I will just tell people that it is important that you get to know and understand yourself. And understanding means that you need to understand the patterns of your emotional part of being, or how you receive things, how you reject love, like how was love modeled for you from the beginning, so that when you get into a romantic relationship, you will know how to do that. And then another thing is that most people, when they go into relationship, we are always putting the best foot. I just want to show the best part of me, but you won't hack it. like it's just advising people to be as real as possible, so that even as you start dating conversations, you talk about, get to know people's experiences, get to know people's woundings, get to know people's personalities, what are the things they're struggling with. And if you get to know people from that perspective, maybe this will answer your question. If someone will know that this is Sharon, this is her experiences, these are the kind of probably the woundings she has experienced. It doesn't have to be childhood. There are people who had beautiful childhood experiences, but across life, because that's what we call experiential woundings. Life happened, maybe you lost a loved one, maybe it was a literal heartbreak that made you not to trust people again with your heart. So when you open up yourself to talk about this during early development stages of relationship, talk about wounds. Who is this person? Get to know them. Get to know their struggles. Get to know their love languages. Get to know their boundaries. What are their boundaries? So that when this person is kind of behaving in another way, you are able to detect that there's something wrong. So if you don't talk about these things, you won't even know that there's a problem with this other person, because you have not known them. You have not understood the patterns of, what it means to be wounded and how does a wounded person behave. Yeah, and we have a guest here.
Thank you, Sharon, for that. I think it's one big element that many people overlook. You meet someone, they're all grown up. Probably you meet in college, in the university, or in the work life, or even in church doing ministry. You start dating, but you don't want to look back at their background. So you're telling us that it is very important to want to know where this person is coming from. Good.
Yeah, it's good, but again, don't be kind of like a detective, because some people want to really dig so deep into people's parts. So even as you talk with the other person, let them share what they're comfortable with, because sometimes people also have a past that they never want to come to the surface, especially if it will not hurt your relationship. You can still give people time. There are people who will gradually share, because again, even as we begin dating, I still don't know you. So there are people be sharing into it. So it's important also to create a safe space for each other. This thing that has been modeled for us for a long time, that when you go to date, you should, show yourself as perfect, and that is how people hide. So by the time you're married and you realize this person is behaving like this, so from the word go, be open to each other. Let it begin from a friendship level. Be open. Like, you feel this person, I can tell them anything, they can tell me anything. Then vulnerability begins there, and you talk about the issues I've just said. Yeah.
Let's talk about your healing journey. How was that like? At what point did you now realize I am not okay? I am not okay and I need help.
Yeah.
And did someone reach out to you, or did you reach out to someone? And what are some steps that you have taken to get to where you are, that now you're in a position whereby you can hold somebody else's hand? So how was that journey like? Because I know it was not a one-day thing.
Yeah.
So how was that journey like? Yeah.
All right. So I didn't start my journey long ago. Maybe for someone it should sound long, but my healing journey started in 2021. Yeah, and that's when I met. There's a particular woman I met, and I was going through a lot of stuff, and I had lost so many relationships. I was hurting already, and I mean relationships, I mean even friendships. It doesn't have to be romantic relationships. And then so I shared with her my story and told her, this is what I've been going through, this is what I've experienced, just as you have conversations. And then it just happened that she's someone that has gone through soul wounds training. She does that. And so when I was sharing with her, she picked things. And then as I spent time with her, a few months, and then she was able to connect them to trauma. Then one day she called me to her house, because they always show up. They will show up in how you're relating with people, how you are reacting. Because I was also very bitter. I was a very bitter person, but I was still a Christian though. Then that being a Christian doesn't change the fact that you're still wounded and you need help. So this one particular day, she called me to her house and told me, Sharon, there are things I have noticed with you, 1, 2, 3, and she she was really, really open with me, truth with love. And then she told me, I think you will need to deal with these things. And then she took me through a training on soul wounds, and for the first time I was able to know that there's something called childhood trauma, or trauma that we experience through different ways of things that we experience in life. And then that's how I discovered, by the way, from what you've told me, I really need help. I need to deal with the things in my heart. I thought I loved God, and then later on I realized I was even struggling with relating with God as a father, because I didn't have an established relationships with my dad. So that was also an area I was struggling with my relationship with God. So when I she helped me see that, I began to do a soul search, like took some days, and began to reflect what happened to me as a child. What are the things that are, as until today when I talk about them, they are hurting me. I was not also in a good relationship with my mom, because I realized after school there's just a way things were not happening, and I wished that she would do things in a certain way. But I did understand that it was a trauma I experienced during my time with her and all that. So I had to sit down and think and talk to Sharon. Lord, we say, call yourself a meeting. And I said, Sharon, this and these are things that have been happening. This is how you behave. This is how you treat people. This is how you talk. This is how you do things. And I realized I had so much to deal with. And then one of the things that really helped is have someone walk with you and point out things. I was also willing to humbly ask people that were really close to me, asked my friends, like, what are some of the things that you don't like about me, that you feel I do but you're not comfortable with. I was also very commanding, like I wanted things to be done my way, because I just wanted to always prove a point that I'm right, because all my life I was controlled. So I also wanted to be in that space where it feels good to control people. So they gave me positive feedback with truth and love. And then I also had people who were holding me accountable for things. So I had to draw things and realize these individuals that are not happening right. And I said there are people I need to forgive, there are things I need to release. I'm not going to so much details about my family, because I have not asked for permission to share some things that broke me as a child, and I carried the brokenness into adulthood. So I had to begin to look at them and realize, by the way I'm adult, if I don't deal with these things, the trauma cycle in my family will continue also with me. So I also looked for a counselor, talked to her about it, and she was helping. So I had accountability people who were a safe space for me, that allowed me to talk to them. I also attended meetings that were having conversations about childhood trauma, about daddy wounds, mommy wounds, just talking about soul wounds, and that helped me to open my heart to healing. I also had to really welcome God into my heart, because sometimes we become wounded and hurting, but we still want to show up in front of God and like we have already figured things out. But Jesus also wants the vulnerable part of you, where you will open your heart to him and tell him, Lord, this is where it's hurting, this is where I'm struggling, this is what happened. He knows that immediately. He doesn't know, he knows, but he just waits for you to invite him in. So apart from relationships around me, I also had to welcome God into those hurting spaces of my heart and let him do the work. That has helped me, that now I'm able to work with other people. Yeah.
Wow. And two things. One, that it is possible to be a born-again Christian and still have some wounds, and that when you're wounded, it is possible to struggle relating with God. I didn't know there are people who struggle to relate with God as a father. So probably we have people in our churches that don't know how to deal with God as a father.
Yeah.
So, and what can people do to help them? Yeah, because they need help. So what can a pastor do, maybe, or a church leader, or a friend do to help someone heal their relationship and their view of God?
Wow, that's a beautiful question there. So yeah, there are people who struggle with it. Maybe it doesn't have to be relating with him as a father, because our experiences define how we react to situations or how we interact with God. For maybe there's someone who is struggling with God to understand God as a healer. Maybe because they saw their loved ones go through a lot of pain during sickness to death. So that, because of the grief and the loss and the wound that came out of it, when they hear people say God is a healer, that part of God they cannot relate with him, they detach. So yes, it's possible, because our, like I said, trauma, there's a way it changes the way we were wired to relate, the way we were wired to feel, the way we were wired to do things. And then, because the one thing about wounds or being wounded, I mentioned that you begin to build a wall, and the kind of wall you begin to build, it's because you don't want to let people in, because you don't want to be hurt. So you build a wall for friends, you build a wall even in church. You don't want to be part of a community because maybe you are hurt through a community. When you're in church, maybe you are wounded in another church and you come into this new church, so you fear that maybe you'll be hurt here again if you open up yourself to receive people in again. So people begin to build a wall. So I think one of the ways that the churches, or maybe leaders, it doesn't have to be the church only, even organizations, they have these people working for them, employers. The one way they can help is first facilitate those safe spaces. Let it be clear that we can actually talk about these things. So the moment you begin having conversations about mental health, Christian, having mental health issue, it doesn't mean that you are carnal. It doesn't mean that you are less powerful. Even the most powerful still will experience depression, anxiety, fear, bitterness. Because when we receive Jesus, we don't become superhumans or angels. We are still human, still having the flesh. And that is why we still need the help of the Holy Spirit. So we'll be hurt, but just having to open spaces where people in the church, the young people, adults, women, men, are able to feel that this thing that I'm experiencing, I can actually talk about it. When a young person experiences a heartbreak, how do you react about it? Do you say, si tulikuambia, we told you not to go into that relationship? That is not showing empathy for that. Maybe they really made a mistake, but you cannot change the fact that they are hurt. They are hurting. So how do you create that space for this young person to still come to church and say, I can talk about this thing, I have people pray for me, and apart from prayer, they will give me a listening ear, and that this person will feel I've been heard, that how I'm feeling, someone cares. Sometimes you don't even have to give someone advice. There are people who are just looking for you to sit and listen at what is happening. Someone just wants a hug. Like, if we create those spaces for people, it will help people to actually start being vulnerable to talk about the things that are happening. And through that, we will stop suicides that are happening. People are committing suicide even in the church. There are people who are struggling with secret sins because they feel, I cannot talk about it because people will judge me, I'll be condemned, I'll be chased out, because even as we show up before God in our weaknesses, He is able to purge us and show His strength to us. So let's allow vulnerability in the church. When people make mistakes, let's not demonize them. Give them an opportunity for repentance and also for healing in our spaces.
Good. You're talking about safe spaces. Kindly help someone who doesn't know about safe spaces. And you have mentioned correctly that it is not only in the church, it could be in the family, it could be at work, because wounds happen everywhere, and someone can be hurt in the place of work. Probably walk us through that. How can one create a safe space at home, create a safe space at work?
How you can create a safe space at home and at work is, one, just be there to listen. just offer a listening ear. And then when you see someone behaving in a particular way, a colleague or a family member, make the first step and go and ask, are you okay? Sometimes just that question can change someone's whole thing that is happening inside them, that it will show like someone even cares. Because sometimes there are people who are just waiting for someone who will ask how they're doing, what is happening. So show concern for your loved ones or for your colleagues, or your employees who you see are behaving in a certain way. And then when they begin to talk, give them an opportunity to share. Some, if you feel that they need actually a professional to help them, you can advise them to go for therapy or going to see a counselor or a psychologist who will help them according to what they are going through. And then don't be fast to put people away, even when some will come and talk to you about what they're going through. Don't talk about yourself when you're listening to someone who is hurting. Give them time to share with you how they're feeling. Show empathy. Some just give them a hug. Some of these people you can even be checking. Call them. Pay a visit, buy a gift, appreciate them, especially when you understand what's going on in their lives. And then also be intentional about, especially right now, I know people are very busy. Everyone is, focusing on their lives. Please spare time to check on your family members. Spare time to just check on someone, even a text, a call, a visit. It could go a long way to have that person feel like this is someone I can talk to.
Because I think that this is where most of us get it wrong. When you're talking to me, I want to give you my own experience as well. So you're affirming that when I'm listening to you, I should not give you my problems. I just listen first.
Listen fast.
Wow, I think that is very key, and our viewers should note that. You mentioned something about church wounds. Do they exist? Are they real? Are people wounded in the church? Tell us more about that.
Great. So even as I mentioned that, I forgot to mention a very important point on how to help people who are hurting around us. So even as they share with you, it's important to ask them. So Sharon, you've told me this is what is happening. Maybe they are grieving. Ask them how they would want you to support them. Because sometimes we give the support those people don't want or they don't need. So they begin to pull away, and that will be really frustrating for you. So ask them how they will want you to support them. Some will tell you, pray for me. Some will tell you, please be coming and visit me. Some will tell you, be texting me. Some will tell you, I don't want to talk about it, and respect their requests. So about church wounds, they exist. Yeah, they do. And well, there are people who are okay, yeah, talking about the question that we've asked about church wounds. So yeah, church wounds are there. There are people who get hurt in church, just as we'll get hurt at home, just as we'll get hurt in our workplaces, so that someone does not misinterpret this. So even in church, people go with different perspectives and different expectations. So there are people who, the kind of relationships that we ruined is when people are serving together and we have a different dynamic of personalities of people who are involved together. And so because many people think that church is a perfect place where if you go, you will not get hurt. So because of those expectations, there are pastors who are also not aware of the things that their members are dealing with. So because they don't know how to help them, and sometimes members don't explain to them how they will want to be helped or supported. So people get hurt in different ways. One, there are people, I've had people who share, like I was going through a hard time. I went and shared with my pastor. I was very vulnerable. I was very vulnerable with him, shared with him secrets of my heart, and then voila, the next day you hear it with everyone. So people get hurt in such ways. So if you're a leader, you're a pastor, please, if people share with you their personal stuff, if they wanted to share it with the whole congregation, they would have gone in front of the church and asked for a microphone. So it's important that when someone shares a vulnerable thing about you, don't share it with anybody else, because those are the things that are hurting people out here. Gossips, backbitings, and all that. These are things that are hurting people in the church. There are people who also, relationship wise, the relationships get strained in church, romantic and both friendships. So when those things happen and probably they are not handled well, people will leave the church wounded. There are people who are also fully giving themselves in serving in the church, but sometimes when leaders are not aware, instead of taking these people as gifts, they can, I don't want to use the word being used because it will not sound really well. But that is how sometimes people feel like they labor in giving themselves in service. But when a mistake happens, someone is sent out of a church like a small demon or something. So people leave feeling that the only place I felt will be a healing space for me, the only space I felt like would be a place where I would experience God, I'm still leaving that place more wounded than I left, whichever, because people go through issues. And this just a way, an expectation we cannot take away. Because I hear people say, oh, so a job and you are hurt, you still go back. It's just a way that church people have a perspective about it, and we cannot change that. So it's important for church members. This is not only for pastors. As a Christian, how do you take care of your fellow Christian? How do you take care of that brother who is struggling in sin? Are you the first person to reveal their nakedness so that they can be attacked? Are you, as a Christian in that church, how are you taking care of that person who is struggling with divorce, or someone who is struggling with different addictions? How do you take care of them? Because that now informs how things will trickle down from the leadership to the whole congregation. So yes, church wounds are there. People are hurting. There are people out here actually who even stopped going to church because of offenses. Sometimes we rush to judge and say that people who take offenses from church are not mature spiritually. Actually, some are really mature, but you cannot ignore people's wounds, because if someone tells you I'm hurting, they mean it. It might not make sense to you, but it makes sense to them. So if you hear that and you're a Christian, first ask, how can you help that brother and that sister so that we don't lose them out there to the enemy. They find healing. If you feel they're not yet mature, maybe as they heal, you can work with them to help them find their footing.
Well, that is awesome. And I think it will help people generally, so that they are able to better take care of the people around them, be it at home, be it in at the workplace, be it in church. Probably talk to us about mental health. I think this is one area that many people are not familiar with. And whenever you hear mental health, what comes to mind is mtu amechizi, someone who's gone nuts and you need to go to Madhare Hospital. I think that's the most common understanding that we have of mental health. Kindly help us demystify that. Yeah.
So I might not have the best explanations, but I will define it the simplest way I know how to, because I know there are better professionals who will define this better than me. So mental health, when you talk about mental health, it doesn't mean that you are mentally ill or that you need to, be in a place where umefungiwa. No, like mental health affects people in different ways. There are those that are struggling with depression, stress. If you don't know how to manage stress is also, it affects your mental state. And we also see people who are always struggling with anxiety. You are always anxious. People are always fearful, and it begins to reveal itself in your confidence, in your self-esteem, and how you're showing up as a person. So you cannot talk about mental health without talking about the roots. And of course, this is what we were mentioning about trauma. We have mentioned it consistently in our conversation. So for mental health thing, it's caused by different things. We talk about rejection. There are people who experience betrayal. You had people you trusted, you loved them, but something happened. They betrayed you, and that relationship broke. It leaves you hurting, and it affects your mental state as a person. And that's where now depression will begin to come in, stress will begin to come in. There are people who have experienced rejection, I said, abandonment, loss. Maybe you've lost a loved one, someone you love so dearly, maybe a parent, a child, a husband. Those things begin to affect our mental state. And so many things maybe will resonate with this. Right now is kind of a pandemic. People are struggling with mental health. Job losses. People lose jobs, people lose money, people lose houses, people lose things, and these things affect our mental state. And so we are glad that we are talking about this. And if you're out there and you feel you are in that space and you're probably wondering, who can you talk about? There are people available to help you go through that. Talk about it. There are also professionals whose heart is at just helping you walk through that. Yeah.
Good. And you're one of those people through Unfold Global. Kindly take this opportunity to tell us more about Unfold Global and what it is that you do, and who's your target audience, and what our listeners can do to support what you do.
Yeah. So yes, Unfold Global is an organization I founded last year, and the vision is to help and nurture young people who are struggling with mental health issues, and they're looking for a space where they can talk about it, and they're also looking for a place where they can know how to go through the healing journey, and a place where they can be held accountable as they go through that. And so that is what Unfold is all about. So we do trainings on different topics of mental health, but we also, because it's important, like I said, wounded people wound others. So once you heal, you become a wounded healer. So our heart is to have you heal so that you're able to help other people heal in your workplace, in church, and whichever space you're in. I've been wounded. I've struggled with wounds. And when I healed, that is where I'm here, to be able to talk about healing, because I took up the courage and I know that it needs a lot of work. It needs support. And Unfold creates that environment to have you know about trauma and give you the tools that you can able to navigate through it. But we don't do therapy. So because there are places where you will feel you need really to see a therapist. So as we do this conversation, we'll still ask you to go and see a professional to help you. Within our network, we also have professional counselors who would be more than glad to work with you. And so should you want to support us, you can get in touch with us through Facebook. Just Unfold Global, you'll find us there. Our contact is there. You can partner with us through training. If you're a mental health professional, you want to work with our young people to navigate through that. It's a space to be able to impact the next generation, because we have a slogan that we say that trauma must end with us, because it is generational. So it started with our parents and their parents, and it kept on and came with us. So we are looking at ending that. Like after Sharon, my children will not experience trauma. And that can be your story. Maybe you're from a family where you have experienced trauma is the order of the day. You are wounded to the core. It can end. Healing is possible when you are in the right environment. And that is the kind of environment we want to create. And we're looking forward to also working with churches to be able to have these conversations about healing. Yeah.
Something else that you mentioned in our pre-conversation is about churches and home churches in particular. I just want you to talk just a little bit about that. What are home churches? Ama niulize tu hivi, unaendaga church wapi?
Well, what a good and a direct question.
Yeah.
So for me, I attend church at home. Ooh, I know maybe what you may be thinking right now, hearing that. So the model of the kind of church I attend is derived from Acts chapter 2, if you have read it. During the development of the early church, people met in homes. They broke bread together. They did everything. They went for evangelists. People were discipled, and people were coming to faith daily, and all that. So that is the kind of church I attend. I have felt different, people who are followers of Jesus across Kenya, and we also have people who are international outside the country. So we do the model of doing church at home. So that is able to help us disciple people in their homes in order for them to grow and get to disciple the people within their households, and then encourage gospel sharing, because we have been given a command by Jesus. That's the Great Commission, that go out and make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So we do all that in church. We break bread, we worship, we do care time, we care for each other, and then we go out to share the gospel. People coming to faith, we disciple them from the home church. So yeah, that is where I go to church.
Speak to someone probably who's wounded, who was hurt in church, and they say, me, I will no longer go to church. I will stay at home, and because my heart is my church. So what's the difference between that and what you're doing? Yeah.
Okay, I think the difference would be perspective. Like, are you now, your heart is the church because you are still hurting and bitter towards what happened? Because first you need to heal from the experiences you went into church. I don't know what it is, but I know people experience so much woundings, and their feelings are valid. But make sure that even as you stay at home, your relationship with Jesus remains. Because even if you are at home, you still get hurt. But I don't want to also try and say that your reason is not okay. So you can still do church at home, but get to understand, just look at the motive behind it. And then it's also important to be part of believers, gatherings of believers, people who will hold you accountable. So you can still do church the traditional church way that we are used to, going to a particular denomination. If you feel you cannot do it, you can look for people who will still do church with you in the house. Because again, gathering where we meet in homes, it's a place that we are also able to have relationship with God. Because initially, akukwanga na traditional churches, but people are meeting in homes. So you can do it, but make sure you check your heart, so that even as you do that in at home, your heart remains light.
Good. Thank you very much. So as we wrap up the show, in 2 minutes, just talk to someone who is going through trauma and encourage them to seek healing.
So if you are there and you are experiencing trauma, and probably you are in a space where you're wondering, like, where can I find help? And sometimes when I talk about this, it brings tears to my eyes, because I know the struggle. I'll say that ask for help. Healing is possible, so ask for help because it's available, and allow people to help you and help you. Yes.